We're back at the shop working on the 401 AMC engine, and today we're going to be installing the oil scrapers in his quest for every ounce of horsepower he can get. When you have windage and the oil wraps around the crankshaft, it does slow it down a little bit, plus it keeps it from going back down to the pan where the pickup would be reusing the oil and lubricating your parts. We want to try getting it scraped off the moving parts and drop back down into the oil pan. You can see where he's sanded away anything to get rid of a rough surface on the crankshaft. They do make coatings now that make your crankshaft slippery. Some people even have the weights on the flywheels knife edged. There's all kinds of methods to eliminate windage. You'll see these pieces that he bought are already cut out, and they come very close to the crankshaft. Well, every engine's a little bit different. He's using different rods, and you got to rotate it slowly, and we're going to have to clearance it, move the crank back and forth, because tolerances are 40 thousandths on this. You want it close, but you don't want it rubbing and making filings going through the engine. Right here you'll notice a gasket surface that sticks up. We're going to need to cut that so it's flush. You do not use gaskets with this kit. You do use the end gaskets, and then you use the RTV silicone gasket maker, and then you lay that down. And then you're going to put another bead over the top of it before you put the pan on. You can use whatever you got, you know, just a sharp razor blade will cut through this. According to the directions, the clearance should be no less than 40 thousandths, and he's got that figured out here. And you rotate it and make sure that whatever it takes, notching, elongating holes or whatever, get it as at 40 thousandths, and that would be the thing doing its best job. We did the thrust play back and forth, and this has got plenty of clearance. If you see this while it rotates, this was probably made for the regular stock rods with the I-beam rods. These are H-beam, and they're very, we got more than enough clearance here. They're nice where the regular I-beam rods would have a bolt with the head that sticks out here, and then you'd put nuts on this way. This one's threaded through, so we got plenty of clearance here, not even coming close to the cam lobes that are larger than stock. These do have a tendency to drag more oil because you got this scalloped out area where the I-beam rod would be a flat, smooth surface. You see these little holes. After it scrapes it, oil can drain back down. This is upside down, so it lets the oil return back to the pan. All right, this is a card from the manufacturer of the crankshaft scraper for this 401 AMC, but I'm sure the company would make it for every model of car. As far as I'm concerned, I was very satisfied with the way this thing was manufactured. You could tell it was cut out like on one of them CNC burning tables with a plasma cutter. Kept everything very accurate. All we had to do is minimal fitting, because there's blocks that are a little bit different than the others, and you probably wanted to give you a little bit extra material. You can always take some off, you can't add it on. We used our 40 thousandths gauge, and we got it fitting all along, and we did slight bending to bring it closer to the reciprocating parts, and this will do an excellent job for scraping the windage that winds up around the crankshaft and return the oil back to the pan. The thickness of this sheet metal is going to replicate the thickness of the crushed thickness of a regular gasket. This is just going to have RTV gasket maker on both sides of this metal. It's not going to bother us because we've changed our oil pan and stuff, but if you were using a stock pan, you wouldn't want your pickup getting too close to the bottom of the pan, where then it makes it difficult for the oil to enter your pickup. So that's just something to keep in mind if somebody's going to use a stock pan. You know, the new LS engine has a dry sump. That would be the ultimate, but it's very costly. If we have a wet sump oil pan, this is probably going to be as good as you can get with deepened pan, and we're going to think about making a screen that will break up the droplets of oil and actually return the oil back to the pan even better. All right, for all you AMC followers here, if you've done a modification like this guy where he's had the ARP studs installed, before you go torquing everything down and you're going to go into this like making a modified oiling system and you want to do all your checking, before you torque all this things down, you got to be aware of that when you turn this thing right here, you're going to make contact with a stud that's sticking up. So do all your modifications on your oil pan before you do your final torquing, because you're just going to have to take this out anyway. This is what a stock oil pan is on an AMC. The oil comes out the back. This is all tapered in. We cut it right here. This is where the cross member touches, and then went down all the way back here. Just measured, made a piece of steel that went around, tacked it. And most likely, when you buy an oil pan from a Rosso or someplace like that, I'm sure they probably get stock oil pans that are already stamped out. And then they just make the conversion by chopping it off and doing the same thing after they've got another piece that's stamped out. Because it would be more expensive to make a die that stamps out the whole thing. Anybody can do this in their own house and save themselves like $350 for an oil pan. All right, we've gotten to the point where he's lengthened the tube on the oil pump pickup, and this is what the depth of our oil pan is, and you can see it's a ½ inch away from the bottom. That's where he feels comfortable with. We rotated the pickup because mainly this car is going to be used for straight line. We wanted the pickup sucking oil from the back because the back is a little bit deeper than the front. You'll see this is the windage tray that's built into the oil pan from AMC. It locks in this thing so it cannot unscrew. It sits right in there, and this is where the dipstick tube comes through. But that way they're trying to keep the oil from getting sucked up in, you know, around the rotating mass. This is a stock AMC pickup right here. You can see how it's been threaded in. Somebody's used pipe wrench or whatever. But this is the part you're looking at right here. This extends into the block, and there's an oil hole, and it takes a turn. Why would you need this in your way? So most guys chop that off, resulting in this. And when it comes out, it's got more flow going into the block. As you can see on the inside of the oil pan, another trick toward breaking up the windage that wants to climb around the rotating crankshaft and connecting rods is to have either like a stainless steel mesh, or we got this perforated sheet metal, something that'll let the oil go through and drop down and go into these cracks on the side. You know, the screen would do the same thing. Some guys have their studs are set up for holding a windage tray, and you can buy screens that are form fitted to the crank and the connecting rods, and you're going to check all your clearances and stuff. But the one thing, you know, we were talking about saving money. If you're on a real strict diet and trying to get this car down to be as light as possible, you aren't going to get it by fabricating your own oil pan. because by the time we're using steel, when you buy a fancy oil pan that's made out of aluminum, it would be half the weight of this. This is like 10 pounds with all the steel. So, for 10 pounds and you're saving a couple $100, I think it's worth it.